What if I told you that one of the darkest acts that Darth Vader has ever committed was not an act of war, but of imprisonment? Not a slaughter, but something far worse, something eternal. This is the fate of the Grand Inquisitor. Once a Jedi Temple Guard, an enforcer of balance and order, he died in flame and fury, only to be bound beyond death by the very man that he feared the most. This is not a tale of lightsaber combat. This is not a tale of victory or redemption. This is a tale of spiritual mutilation. A punishment so cruel, it revealed the true hierarchy of the dark side to Darth Vader. Greetings, lore junkies and students of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. Before he was ever called the Grand Inquisitor, he was something else entirely, a Jedi Sentinel. A figure of the Jedi Temple, one who was to stand with silent dignity in the golden mask and the robes of the ancient Jedi. The Pawuan known only as the Temple Guard had no name that we know of, no identity, only a duty. And it would be beneath that mask that resentment would fester. He stood guard over secrets he was never allowed to know, watched over the Jedi archives and the forbidden sections beyond them, and yet was denied access to them by Master Jocasta Nu, denied again and again. He watched as the Jedi Temple, bloated and political, stumbled towards catastrophe. He saw the arrogance of the High Council, their contradictions, the refusal to adapt, the disconnect between the Jedi ideals and Jedi practice. And he watched Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, be indulged and excused. He watched Dooku fall. He saw the disillusionment spreading in whisper across the Order, and still, he was told to keep quiet, to obey. This would eventually break him. By the time the Jedi Order fell, the Temple Guard had already turned his back on the Order and his heart. And when the Inquisitorius came calling, he accepted. The man who once wore gold became the Empire's first monster in red and black. He would hunt Jedi. He would serve Vader. He would become the Grand Inquisitor. As the Grand Inquisitor, he became something terrifying, ruthless, cunning, and sadistic. He had all the cruelty that the Empire needed. But even in service to Lord Vader, the fear never left him. The Grand Inquisitor was terrified of the one thing above all else: failure, because he knew what failure meant in the presence of his master Vader. This fear reached its apex during the events of Star Wars Rebels, when the Grand Inquisitor confronted Kanan Jarrus aboard the Sovereign. In their final duel, Kanan, once hesitant and uncertain, tapped into something deeper, something powerful. And now the Grand Inquisitor began to lose their duel. As he stood at the edge of the abyss, blade destroyed, future gone, he made a final, chilling decision. There are some things far more frightening than death. The Grand Inquisitor let go. He fell into the fire. His body perished in the explosion, but his torment was only just beginning. The line, "Some things are far more frightening than death," was not bravado. It wasn't even fear of Vader's wrath in the conventional sense, but it was knowledge. Because the Grand Inquisitor knew that in the Empire, death was not always the end, and in the Sith, this was a certainty. For Vader in this case, he had something else in mind entirely. A new form of imprisonment beyond knowledge. Instead of letting the Grand Inquisitor's soul pass into the Force, Vader took it, manipulated it, bound it. To this day, we don't exactly know how in the lore, but we do know this: Darth Vader had performed a ritual not unlike something that Palpatine would have attempted. And the fact that Vader did this in itself is deeply, deeply strange and unsettling. It's so unlike him. Vader is not a man of ritual. He is a brute, a warlord, a conqueror. Vader's strength is in domination, not in spell work. Yet here he bound a spirit to a place, to an ancient High Republic Jedi outpost on the remote world of Tempest. Why? Because he didn't want the Inquisitor to serve him in life anymore. He wanted him to serve him in death. This was no reward, no escape from death, no twisted promotion. This was one thing: punishment. The Jedi Temple Guard, who had once been obsessed with knowledge, driven to madness by his inability to access the forbidden section of the archives, that obsession led him to betray the Order. And now he was chained for eternity to a site filled with Jedi knowledge that he could not use. He had become the ultimate gatekeeper, a warden of wisdom that he could not read, a ghost forced to kill those who sought the very truths that he once craved. This is the irony of damnation. Vader did not just destroy him, he understood him, and then broke him in the exact way that would hurt him the most. Years later, another would come: Luke Skywalker. Tormented by the loss of his lightsaber on Cloud City, desperate to rebuild, Luke traveled to the temple on Tempest after hearing rumors from the Jedi exile Verula. But the young Jedi did not expect what waited for him there: a fire-wreathed spirit, a ghost whose voice dripped with hatred. The Grand Inquisitor returned not as a man, but as an instrument, broken, feral, rage-bound. He attacked Luke without mercy, not as an assassin, but as something consumed by compulsion. This wasn't the Inquisitor's will, it was the will of the prison itself, of the ritual. The duel was brutal. Luke was still untrained, and the Inquisitor nearly killed him. But Luke, ever the student of balance, held firm. In a moment of clarity, as relics of the past shimmered around him, Luke found the strength in the Jedi legacy, and he cut the spirit down. But he didn't destroy it, he only dispelled it. Vader had sensed this. From across the stars he knew that Luke had encountered his trap, and that he had survived. But the Grand Inquisitor's ghost had not passed on. His spirit reformed, shimmering, incomplete, now twisted. And Vader came in person to see. There in the temple, the Dark Lord of the Sith looked down on the creature he had once commanded, and now he still did. The Grand Inquisitor begged, "Will there never be a chance of release for me?" And Vader responded with only this: "You are but a tool, shaped to serve my purposes, and you will continue." This is not cruelty for cruelty's sake. This is the doctrine of the Sith. The strong rule, the weak obey. This is a truth even found in death. But this is all just the surface. What makes the entire ordeal so disturbing is that it's not Vader acting on orders. This is not conquest. This is not revenge for Vader. This is personal. Darth Vader is breaking the spirit of a servant who feared him, not with the lightsaber, but with eternity itself. And what's even more chilling is how deliberate it all seems, how calculated. Vader didn't just imprison a soul, he chose the perfect soul, the perfect place, the perfect symbolism. And he did so using a method. Years after the Empire's rise, the galaxy was on the brink of another transformation. The Jedi were extinct, or so it was believed. Luke Skywalker was the last known heir to the Jedi's legacy, and he was searching for answers, for teachings, for remnants of what was lost. The temple that Luke discovered was ancient, buried in jungle and shadow, not one of the grand monuments of Coruscant, but a relic of the High Republic, forgotten by the galaxy, remembered only by the Force. What he found was not silence, he found not peace. What he found was him. The Grand Inquisitor appeared as a wraith, his spirit ignited in flame, his face twisted by agony. He was no longer the calculating killer of the early Empire, he was wrath given form. His presence shocked Luke, not because it was a ghost. Luke had heard of Force spirits before, but because this one radiated hatred. There was no serenity here, no calm, only torment. The Inquisitor did not speak in riddles, he didn't offer teachings, he only attacked. But this was not a strategic duel, it was unhinged, rabid. The Inquisitor's strikes were relentless, almost mindless, like a beast bound by compulsion more than will. And in a sense he was. This was not the Inquisitor's choice, this was programming. This was a curse. Vader had bound him not just to a place, but to a role. A warden, an executioner. A ghost forced to replay his failure over and over again. Luke survived if only barely. His resolve and a spark of instinctive understanding of the Force is what allowed him to defeat the Spectre, at least temporarily. But make no mistake, the spirit did not fade. It only recoiled, it waited, and it remained. But why would Vader, brutal, efficient, unstable, go through the trouble of binding a soul in this place? Why leave this place not under Imperial Guard, but under the control of something more spiritual? And why allow Jedi knowledge to remain intact at all? Why not destroy it as Palpatine would have, or have it whisked away to a world of Coruscant or Biss? The answer, Luke would later suspect, was this: because it didn't belong to Palpatine. It belonged to Vader. This outpost, hidden for the Emperor, seemed to be Vader's own project, his own secret. The ghost of the Grand Inquisitor was not protecting Jedi knowledge from outsiders. He was protecting it from the Emperor. To understand how chilling this is, we have to understand Vader's psychology. In both continuities, legends, and canon, Vader is not typically interested in arcane rituals. That is Sidious's domain exclusively. Vader rules through power, through fear, through the blade. But this time in the lore is much different, and it's extremely rare and unique. Vader has gone out of his way to preserve this temple, to hide it, to stock it with relics. But he doesn't guard it with technology. He used spiritual binding, a dark art more akin to necromancy than actual strategy. But why would he do this? It wasn't to honor the Jedi. It wasn't for the sentimental reasons that you may think. It was to hoard knowledge, but not for the Empire, for himself, and perhaps even for Luke. Here's what the picture sharpens. Vader had already sought to turn Luke to the dark side, but unlike Sidious, who promised power and prestige, Vader approaches it more paternal. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. Vader wanted an heir, someone to carry his legacy, not Sidious's. And if you want to train someone to overthrow a Sith Lord, you don't give them propaganda. You give them Jedi knowledge. You give them forbidden knowledge. You give them something that Palpatine would never allow. But you can't do it directly. You hide it. You test them. You make them earn it. This time, Vader has learned from his master. We believe that Vader is the architect here of a grand design. What better way to test Luke than to sending him to a temple bound by the spirit of a fallen Jedi? What better way to show him the price of failure and the necessity of strength? But there's another angle to all of this, one that is extremely unsettling. Vader does not typically chase immortality. That obsession belongs to Sidious, but there are new hints here to the lore. Hints that Vader's binding of the Grand Inquisitor was not just symbolic, that he may have been experimenting, that he may have been reaching into the spiritual territory for reasons of his own. We know Vader was obsessed with resurrecting Padme. We know that he visited ancient temples, dark nexuses, caves filled with prophecy and fear. The ritual, this act of binding, could have been a test, a way to explore what lay beyond death, to see what could be brought back, to see what could be controlled. And what makes it all the more disturbing is that the Grand Inquisitor's torment was just a prototype. At the heart of this entire event is a deeper truth about the Sith. The Inquisitors were promised power, promised purpose, promised enlightenment, but there are always pawns, tools, fodder. The Grand Inquisitor gave his life to serve the Sith, and in return, his soul was chained like a dog. This is the hierarchy of the dark side. There is no loyalty, no reward, only usefulness. And when you outlive yours, you don't just die, you suffer. This is not Lord Vader being cruel. This is Doctrine. And in following that doctrine, Vader didn't just prove himself a Sith. He proved he was becoming something worse. Not a warrior, not a tyrant. Vader was becoming a master. His torment was not over. His chain was not broken. And if Vader had lived longer, he may have seen what that chain was really tied to. But in the end, this act of binding a soul in agony for eternity, it truly remains one of the darkest things that Vader has ever done. Not because it was violent, not because it was explosive, but because it was cold, calculated, and deeply, irrevocably personal. The trap laid for Luke on Tempest had all the hallmarks of a Palpatine scheme. Ancient Jedi ruins, a cursed guardian, and the dark side corruption radiating from its walls. But it wasn't Sidious who orchestrated this horror, it was Vader. And that, more than anything else, is what makes it so disturbing. Vader was not a mystic like his master was. He was a weapon refined, relentless, and brutally direct. Throughout his rise, he displayed little interest in arcane rituals and metaphysical experimentation. Vader's understanding of the Force, though deep, was forged through combat and even a submission to power. Vader destroyed temples. He didn't study them. He killed Jedi, not haunted their ghosts. So why then did he spare the Grand Inquisitor's soul only to curse it to endless torment? The answer lies in irony and in vengeance. Vader knew the Grand Inquisitor's story. He had watched him defect from the Temple Guards. The Grand Inquisitor did not turn out of ideology, but out of resentment. Denied access to the Jedi archives by Jocasta Nu. Mocked for his curiosity. The Inquisitor then saw the dark side not as salvation, but as freedom. As a means to reach what the Jedi had barred him from. But even in turning to the dark side, he found another cage. And Vader, understanding that pain, twisted it a final time. By tethering the Inquisitor's soul to a Jedi outpost brimming with knowledge, Vader didn't just punish failure, he locked his pawn in the very hell that had created him, surrounded by relics and wisdom that he could never understand, never claim, and never destroy. A guard with no purpose, a warden of light who had given himself to dark, now left to burn alone. This was not an execution, it was a sentence. This was an act of cruelty and pure cold strategy. But why did he hide this place from the Emperor? The High Republic outpost was not under lock and key. It was not guarded by stormtroopers or secured by acolytes. It was protected only by one thing, the soul of a broken being. And yet the knowledge inside was vast. Jedi holocrons, artifacts, secrets, and Luke Skywalker guided not by the Empire or by Vader, but by fate. The question is not what Vader was hiding, but who he was hiding it from. Sidious. It was no secret that Palpatine withheld Sith knowledge from Vader. Even the path to immortality, something Vader was once so desperate for, was kept a secret. But here on Tempest, a place Vader had touched and curated himself. Why? Perhaps it was not merely a trap for Luke, but to prepare him. In canon, Vader actively seeks information on Padme's death, and the potential to restore her. His turn to ritual here, though rare, may have been the result of that obsession, a stepping stone towards a power Palpatine refused to share. And in doing so, he proved the dark side's hierarchy was built not on loyalty, but in utility. The Inquisitor believed that by serving, he would ascend. But the truth was crueler. The Inquisitors were tools, pawns in a game that was never meant to include them. And when they failed, they weren't discarded, they were weaponized in death. The Grand Inquisitor was never rewarded for any of his loyalty. He was tortured for it. In binding the Grand Inquisitor, Vader did not merely claim dominion over his servant's body, but over his soul. He made him an eternal part of a hidden legacy that the Emperor could not see. What makes this act one of the darkest in Darth Vader's history is not just the cruelty, it's the intention. This was not an outburst of rage or an act of vengeance. It was premeditated, ritualistic, unnecessary, spiritually devastating. Vader condemned the Grand Inquisitor to live out the very madness that had driven him to the dark side to begin with. And yet, it has revealed something else. A Sith Lord preparing for a future that would never come. Perhaps Vader did intend to destroy Sidious. Perhaps he did intend to raise Luke as a successor, equipped with Jedi knowledge hidden beneath the Emperor's nose. And perhaps in that quiet, unspoken plan, the Grand Inquisitor would become Sentinel and sacrifice. In the end, we remember the Grand Inquisitor for his fall, his fury, and his failure. But we should also remember what became of him. Not a warrior, not a martyr, but a ghost. One trapped in a tomb of knowledge, guarding secrets he can never understand, bound to the will of a master that he can never escape. A fate truly worse than death. But as always, my friends, acolytes, and fellow lore junkies, what are your thoughts on one of the most evil things that Darth Vader has ever done in either Legends or canon? And can you think of examples that are hidden that are worse? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives here today, and may the Force be with you.